Hello, good evening all, and long time no speak. You join me in the UK from Norfolk, where it is currently 39 degrees and I am absolutely sweltering, and my garage is the coldest part of the house right now, hence the reason I'm hiding in here. And today we're going to talk about the Mobula 6, and this is the HDzero Express LRS version, and this little guy is quite special for a number of reasons, and this was kindly sent to me by your FPV along with the HDzero VRX, and he just basically sent it me to have a look at, so many thanks for that. Let's crack on with the review. This review is going to take a few steps. The first will be a quick review of the Mobula 6. The next will be my initial impressions of HDzero, because this is the first time I've really seen it in the flesh. And then we'll talk about this little board and my plans for it moving forward. So here we have it. This is the Mobula 6. And as usual, it comes with a little bag, a box of screws, screwdriver, and in this case we get a spare canopy as opposed to a battery like we would have done in the past. And as you can see, it's a tiny little 65mm whoop. We've got 0.8 or 2 19,000 kV motors, exactly the same as the older Mobula 6 race version. The canopy on this guy is slightly taller to accommodate the HDzero board, and if we look underneath you can see we've got the new F4 flight controller with built-in Express LRS via SPI, and unlike the old boards which used connectors for your motors, this guy is directly soldered, as you can see, and at the back there we have a little USB port, obviously to connect it to Betaflight. So beyond the fact that this guy's got Express LRS, the major exciting bit of this guy is obviously that it has the new HDzero Whoop Lite board VTX in it, and the new super small camera that comes along with it. And I think these sell separately for sort of 99 quid for the pair. So you're not sort of paying a massive amount or a massive premium to get this within the Mobula itself. So it's the HDzero that really makes this special, and it's both a pro and a con. If we take the standard Mobula, which weighed 21 and a bit grams, the later more Beetles were stripped down even further and weighed sort of 17.8, 18 grams. This guy weighs 23.8 grams. So as whoops go, although it's not hugely heavy, it's significantly heavier than its previous Mobula versions, and of course the Beetle, etc. And that weight is obviously being added via HDzero. Now you can see on the HDzero board, Happy Model have removed the RF shield which comes with it if you buy it separately, and that allows them to drop the sort of depth of the board to around 4mm, and of course it's connected via this MIPI cable to the little camera. The VTX itself will do 0 to 200 milliwatts, and it's got built-in smart audio, so unlike other HDzero boards, you will change basically your band settings and power via Betaflight's OSD rather than HDzero's OSD. And the star in the show, in my opinion, is this little tiny 1.5mm camera, which if you compare it to a Cadex Nebula Pro Nano, which is the smallest camera you can get for DJI, don't know if you can see, but the difference is huge, and even the difference in lens size is huge as well. This guy's pretty much double the size. So what they've done is they've shrunk everything down into tiny dimensions. It also comes with this little connector, and basically what you do is you plug said connector into this little pin connector here, and then connect the other end to the cable that you will get with the VRX, and that allows you to update the VTX. But we're here, and the first part of this video is to talk about obviously this guy and review this guy, and it's very much a mixed bag. I'm super impressed by the quality of this tiny little camera when you're looking at it on a pair of OLED goggles, and I'm using some SkyZone R30, sort of a couple of years old I think these goggles are, with an OLED screen, and obviously the screen size in your goggles is smaller. The SkyZones I'm using I think are 35 degrees. The quality of the image is mind-blowing for such a small little tiny whoop. It's so much more enjoyable flying around with, you know, HD footage than it is with the crapo cameras that usually come with these variations of run cams, and it turns flying it inside into really an absolute delight because you can see everything, and the DVR footage I'm posting doesn't really sort of do justice to the OLED image that you see in the goggles, simply because the OLED image is obviously smaller and the colours are better. The downside of course is that it's very heavy, or heavy for a 65mm whoop, and we can't get away from that fact. Indoors, which is of course the only place that you would really use this because it's too light, indoors it flies great. I have no complaints with how it flies. It flies lovely, it's fantastic, sort of whipping around your property. The downside is that additional weight is A, hard on your battery, and B, more noticeable when you ask for any sort of punch. So in terms of batteries, if you're using the usual 300 milliamp hour, or I've also been using a few of these 350 milliamp, you struggle to sort of get 2.5 minutes, something like that. So the first thing you want to do is basically upgrade the ESC firmware to Bluejay and flash it to 96 kilohertz, and I'll leave the links down below on how to do that. And basically that will give you an extra sort of 30 seconds or so. My batteries, to be fair, are pretty old and well used, so you're probably looking at sort of 3.5 minutes of sort of normalish whoop flying once you've flashed it to that 96 kilohertz, simply because it's dragging around so much additional weight. You'd probably get more like 4 minutes or so without, you know, the additional weight of the HDzero. The other thing to mention is, while this guy is running ELRS and obviously HDzero, because ELRS on this board is via SPI, it isn't as good as the normal Express LRS receivers you will find on a 5-inch quad, etc. Now I've been flying mine on the Radio Master Zorro. I started off on my usual packet rate of 250, 100 milliwatts, and after the quad dropped out of the sky behind a crane at sort of a range of maybe 30 meters, I quickly dropped my packet rate down to 50 and upped the power to the max on this particular system of 250. And I haven't had any fail-safes subsequently, but your RSSI basically goes up and down like a nun's nightie, simply because with an antenna like this, little wire antenna, you know, if it gets sort of knocked or blocked, you will see your RSSI fluctuate. So unless you're flying in completely clear air, which you won't be, which I'll come on to in a second, Express LRS isn't the all singing wonderful thing that it is on your 5-inch or 3-inch etc. quad with a normal EP1, EP2 receiver. It's basically gimped on such a small board, and some of that's probably because of the interference with having everything very close together. as I said, you won't be flying this guy outdoors, because while it's fine indoors, if you fly it in any sort of wind, and I mean any sort of wind, where I live it's really flat, the wind tends to sort of gust constantly at, you know, even on the calmest days it's sort of 5 to 10 miles an hour, and even in that sort of wind, this guy sort of wobbles, as you can see on the footage, all over the show, and it just doesn't have enough power and punch at its weight to do anything beyond quick snap rolls, etc. It's just basically too heavy. Now, that's not really a criticism. Obviously, if you're on a flat calm day, you'll probably have a good time, but this guy is really for indoor racing. It's a tiny little thing. You can't really expect it to be able to cope outdoors in any sort of real conditions. And that really sort of summarizes it, to be honest with you. HDzero here is doing something that nobody else can. There's nothing from DJI that you can cram in a 65mm whoop. There's nothing from Walk Snail or the new Avatar system. It really is in a league of its own. And whether or not it's something for you, I think really depends on how deep your pockets are. If you already have a HDzero VRX, then knock yourself out. You're going to have a lot of fun if you like little tiny whoops. Vice versa, if you're into whoop racing and you regularly go to a venue that's set up for these little guys, again, I can see you having a really, really good time, simply because with HDzero the whole thing is so much more enjoyable. And while you'll probably lose some time in terms of the weight of this thing, I dare imagine you'll make up for that in terms of being able to see where you're going better. Moving on, the second part of this video really moves on to what I think would be a better use of something like this beyond its kind of one-trick pony stage. The first thing is, I think this little whoop board would be better in a bigger frame. So that's the Mobula V3, Mobula 7 75mm whoop, and I've also got a newbie drum cockroach 75mm. If you could take the components of this and add it into this, I think this would be a different review, because this frame, with running the same components but maybe a 450 milliamp hour battery, would offer a lot more life, a lot more punch, and a lot more sort of capability than this little guy. The question in the back of my mind, if you were to do that, is whether this little 5A ESC is going to be okay on a 75mm frame. And the honest answer to that is I don't know. I do know that the Mobula 7 that runs on this frame comes with 12A ESCs, but like all these things, we're talking happy model here, so you don't really know the quality of the ESCs. 5A should be more than sufficient to run on that bigger frame, but the proof, as they say, will be in the pudding. You'll notice also that I'm running tri-blade props, and these ones are gem fans, and that's simply to get more punch. It comes with these little 1219 props, and while these are super quiet and super smooth, it just needs the extra punch of the tri-blades. An even better prop would be Newbie Drone's ASI 1mm shaft 31mm prop, which are a little bit lighter and a little bit more responsive than these guys. But that's one upgrade path. But the more I've thought about this, the more I think I might go down a different route, and I'm not decided yet. And the reason for that is I've been loving flying this guy, which is the Fox Whoop 25, which flies surprisingly well, albeit in relatively calm conditions. And I've been thinking about getting, when I can get hold of them, a Runcam Thumb Pro, simply because I could add the Thumb Pro onto this, which weighs about 16 grams. It's a little 4K camera, and while the quality is not going to be as good as the stripped Hero 8 etc that I've got, it's going to be good enough for messing around with this guy. I'm thinking, if this sort of 4.5 grams for the VTX and 1.5 grams for the camera is around 6 grams, I could probably save close to 10 or 11 grams by taking the Vista out of this and replacing it with this, and that would offset some of the additional weight of the Thumb Pro, and that will allow me to test really the limitations more with this little guy, because with this little antenna, the range on this guy is pretty, to be blunt, crap. If I sit in my garden, I live in a 3-story house, I can fly around my living room on the middle story, but not much further. If I sit indoors in my living room and fly into my garden, you get the sort of snow effect pretty quickly. And the downside of such a poor antenna is that when that snow effect comes, it comes very, very rapidly. So, you know, people talk about DJI sort of lagging and freezing. If you're running such a sort of little quad with a very poor antenna on it, you get very little time to react before you've lost video completely. And I think in a bigger quad with a proper antenna, this little Whoop light board might have enough juice just to give me the fun freestyle that I'm looking for. So yeah, that's kind of the review really. The product, I think itself is fantastic. It's just hugely limited, and if you're in the market for a 65mm Whoop because you love Whoops and you love HDzero, then this is a no-brainer. If you're looking to enter the HDzero ecosystem, then again, it's a great buy, but I wouldn't buy HDzero for this because I think it's really, really limited. And I can't really comment too much on HDzero itself, simply because I haven't used it before. And while I've found it pretty straightforward and seamless to use, and you can see I'm using mine with little stubby antennas, I have tried it with others. While I found it pretty seamless and easy to use, and the DVR is really good, etc. on it, it's still £200 or there or thereabouts for essentially a tiny Whoop. The system itself, having used it on this little guy, I really, really like. I think it, you know, it has low latency, much better than DJI. The image quality, even on this little camera, is so good. I have no complaints with it. Obviously, the downsides are it doesn't have the same ability with multipathing that DJI does, nor does it have the same penetration as DJI does. But sort of 7 times out of 10, are they going to bother you? Probably not. And it's much, much cheaper. Certainly for, you know, if you've got existing goggles. So that is it really. The only thing I would say, that is it really. The only thing I would say, if you have SkyZone goggles, you may find when you connect up that everybody is as blue as a Smurf, and that's basically because you need to turn this on to 1080p rather than the 720 it comes with, and that will solve the reversed images that you get on SkyZone goggles. Other than that, it's really, really easy to set up. You just plug your HD output in there. That's the connector that we'll use to update the VTX in the quad. You've got a little SD card in here, and you just download the latest files directly from HDzero, unzip them, make sure you go directly into the folders, add them to the little SD card, shove it in that, update this, the system will automatically delete them, and then you add them on again and connect these wires to the quad, and the VRX will update the VTX in there. So that's it for me. Yeah, really chuffed with the image quality, pretty blown away actually. System itself seems really, really good. This thing, like the Nano, gets super, super hot really, really quickly, like its Vista counterpart. So set it to 0 milliwatts if you're spending a long time in the menus. But other than that, yeah, really happy with it. Thanks again to your FPV for sending it across to me. Really chuffed. And you'll see this in other videos as I play around and experiment. Cheers guys. Thanks. Bye bye.